Mom's cruel messages to my girlfriend. I'm a stoic person, but something recently shook me to my core. I've been with my girlfriend for 8 years, and we're complete opposites. She's a kind and gentle professor, and I love her more than anyone I've ever met. Last night, I was scrolling through her Instagram when I saw a message from her friend. It was a screenshot of a conversation my girlfriend had sent, and her friend was trying to comfort her. I opened the screenshot and was shocked to see multiple cruel messages from my mother. The timestamps showed that this had been going on for who knows how long, a week, a month, or even longer. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and confusion. I didn't know how to handle this situation, and I still don't. My girlfriend is an incredibly kind person, and she doesn't deserve to be treated this way. I'm trying to figure out how to approach my mother about this, and how to support my girlfriend during this difficult time. I'm still trying to process everything, and find a way to move forward. My girlfriend's friend was trying to be supportive, but I could sense the concern and worry in her message. I'm worried about the impact this could have on our relationship, and how to prevent it from happening again in the future. I'm taking this as an opportunity to reevaluate my relationship with my mother, and set boundaries to protect my girlfriend. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I need to take action to ensure my girlfriend's well-being. I took an hour commute to get my coworker in trouble. I live 20 minutes away from work by car, but I took an hour-long public transport route for a week to get my senior coworker in trouble. My senior coworker, who drives to work, had been leaving me with all the tasks of coordinating an upcoming supplier visit, an hour's drive from our office. He made comments about not wanting to drive, asking me if I had been to that area before, trying to get me to take on the responsibility. I rebuffed him, not wanting to add chauffeur to my tasks. When I overheard him telling my manager he would figure something out, I waited for 3 days, but nothing happened. So, a week before the visit, I started leaving my car at home and commuting, waking up an hour early. I told my manager my brother was in town and I lent him my car, and I drafted an email to my manager and senior asking the supplier for transport options since our plans fell through. My manager was livid with my senior, asking if this was his idea of figuring something out, berating him for being irresponsible and leaving work to me, calling it shameful behavior. My senior was in trouble, and I had made my point, all while catching up on my podcasts during the extra commute time. In the end, my senior learned his lesson, and I was able to drive to the supplier visit after all, my manager having sorted out the transport issue. Now, my senior is more considerate of my workload, and I am back to my normal commute, but I will never forget the time I took a long commute to teach him a lesson.
I ended things with my boyfriend. I was in a relationship with my boyfriend for 2.5 years, but I was feeling disrespected and unsure if I should stay with him. He had certain expectations of me, like being a housewife, that I didn't feel comfortable with. I decided to have a real talk with him to see where his attitude actually was. If he showed sincerity, maybe we'd try one more time. If not, I knew it was time to move on. Tonight, I brought up how he's been treating me and how disrespected and lonely I've felt throughout the relationship. Instead of listening, he immediately got defensive and blew up at me for not caring about his feelings and treating him badly. In that moment, I got my answer. I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I stayed quiet, packed the few things I had left at his place and walked out. I blocked him on everything. And honestly, I haven't felt this relieved in so long. I know I made the right choice, and a huge part of that clarity came from realizing I deserve better. I was tired of feeling lonely and disrespected in my own relationship. I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and ended things with him. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I feel relieved, free, and excited for what the future holds. I can finally focus on myself and my own happiness. I learned that I deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, and I won't settle for anything less. I hope my story can help others who may be going through similar situations. Remember, you deserve to be happy and respected, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself.
Husband destroying our lives. I've been with my husband for 8 years, married for 3, and lately he's been destroying our lives. It started when his company was bought out in January, and they didn't take any employees with them. The buyout was a bitter pill to swallow, especially since his boss's 5 children worked there, doing the same job as everyone else, but making 3 times the pay. My husband was hurt and wanted time to think about his next move, so I gave him 2 weeks to figure things out, on the condition that he'd start applying for jobs after that. But months have passed, and he still hasn't found a job. He claims it's too stressful to apply, so I've been applying for him, but when interviewers reach out, he ignores them. We've blown through our savings and maxed out our credit cards on groceries, gas, and other expenses. I thought hitting rock bottom would be a wake-up call for him, but it wasn't. I've had to get a second job to make ends meet, working 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., while also being a full-time student. I'm exhausted, and I don't know how to get him to care about the mess we're in. I feel like I'm shouldering the entire burden, and I'm at my wit's end. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up, but I'm trying to hold on to the hope that he'll eventually come around and start taking our situation seriously. For now, I'm just trying to survive, but it's getting harder and harder to see a way out of this mess.
I told my project manager to get to the point in front of 40 people. I had to log into work this morning after a long night of considering drastic measures, like faking my own death and moving to a farm. I had promised an update, so here is the damage report. As I logged in at 8:59 am, my heart was racing and I could hear it in my ears. I hesitated for a minute before clicking on the Slack icon, and when I did, I saw 12 unread messages. Most were from my work friends sending me humorous messages, but one caught my eye: a direct message from the project manager himself, sent at 4:30 p.m. yesterday. The message asked for a quick sync before stand-up, which is corporate speak for a potentially bad conversation. I joined the call with no video, not ready for him to see the fear in my eyes. He joined, and after a brief silence he laughed, a dry, tired laugh. He said so yesterday, and I immediately started apologizing, unleashing a stream of excuses. He cut me off, saying I wasn't wrong, that he had realized after the meeting that he had spent 20 minutes explaining a 2-minute delay. He told me to keep my commentary to myself next time, but also mentioned that my boss thought my comment was unprofessional. However, the project manager had covered for me, telling my boss that I was just frustrated with the audio issues. He ended the call by saying I owed him one. I was shocked and relieved, and I realized that sometimes speaking up, even if it's not the most tactful thing to do, can lead to unexpected outcomes. I'm still trying to process the whole experience, but for now, I'm just grateful that it didn't end in disaster. I'm going to try to be more mindful of my comments in the future, but I'm also glad that I have a project manager who is willing to listen and understand.
Dressed down, so I stood up. I worked in an office where a new, inexperienced and unqualified guy was promoted to team lead, despite HR rules stating he wasn't eligible. This move was met with grievances from multiple qualified individuals, but they were dropped. The new team lead was known for being a suck-up and wasn't well liked, but after his promotion he became wildly hated, except by a few sycophants. Middle management told him to find a way to get people to like him, so he started hosting monthly happy hours that felt mandatory. Most people felt pressured to attend, even if it meant an hour drive each way and finding sitters for their kids, because they were terrified of losing their jobs if they didn't show up. I, however, knew my rights and declined their invite, telling him I wouldn't spend my free time with work people unless I was on the clock. He tried to pressure me into attending, but I stood firm and he eventually walked away in a huff. I had been to parties at my team members' houses and liked them well enough, but I had no interest in socializing with the team lead. As the days went by, I noticed that people who attended the happy hours were trying to curry favor with the team lead, and it was clear that he was using these events to manipulate people into liking him. I was relieved that I had made the decision to stand up for myself and not give in to the pressure. In the end, my decision to decline the invite was a turning point for me, as it showed me that I had the power to set boundaries and prioritize my own needs. I'm still working at the company, and while the team lead is still not well liked, I've earned the respect of my colleagues for standing up for myself.
I was technically correct, the best kind of correct. I was an 18-year-old smart aleck working my first service desk job when a ticket came in with the subject my company name laptop and the description can you help. I replied back saying hi requester, yes, helping with company name laptops is within the scope of the service desk, and then I closed the ticket. This triggered a standard automated response saying if you feel your ticket has not been completed to your satisfaction, please reply back and it will be reopened. The requester replied back saying they still needed help with their laptop, which was not turning on. I told them to contact the hardware team as it was not a software issue. They got upset and said I was being unhelpful, but my manager backed me up saying I was technically correct in my response. The requester eventually got their laptop fixed by the hardware team. I learned that being technically correct is not always the best approach, but in this case it worked out in my favor. The requester was not happy, but my manager was impressed with my knowledge of the service desk scope. I continued to work at the service desk and improved my communication skills to provide better support to our customers. The experience taught me the importance of being empathetic and understanding in my responses, while also being technically correct. I was able to apply this knowledge to future interactions and provide more effective support.
Refusing a return. I worked in a game store in the 90s, selling board games and D&D merchandise. It was the most fun job I've ever had, but retail pays poorly. One day, a woman came in wanting to return a $50 item without a receipt. We were usually lenient about such things, so I didn't think much of it. The item had our price tag on it, so I looked it up in our computer system. Inventory history for that item looked suspicious. We had only ever received one of these items, and it had been removed from inventory multiple times without being sold. This suggested that the item had been stolen, removed from the system when it was discovered missing, then returned and stolen again. I passed the buck to my manager, who was in the back, and told him about the suspicious inventory history. When he told the woman that the return wasn't allowed and she was banned from the store, she became extremely upset. The manager's decision was firm, and the woman was not happy about it. He had been trying to return a likely stolen item, and now she was being banned from the store. The situation was tense, but the manager stood by his decision. In the end, the woman left the store, and we didn't see her again. The incident was a memorable one, and it highlighted the importance of being vigilant about inventory and returns. The store manager's decision had been the right one, and it helped to prevent any further potential theft. The woman's reaction had been intense, but it was a consequence of her own actions. The store continued to operate, and we remained cautious about returns and inventory.
My boyfriend exploded over my computer settings. My boyfriend, 33, got extremely defensive when I, 26, asked him to leave my computer settings alone. He has a habit of optimizing game pictures and spends hours tweaking his monitor settings to get them just right. Earlier that day, he turned on my computer, claiming he didn't believe it had Wi-Fi capabilities. I told him he was welcome to check, and that's when he started messing with my monitor settings. I asked him to please leave them alone, but he continued to fiddle with them, saying they were back to normal. However, I noticed my screen colors had changed, and I asked him again to turn them back. He ignored me, and I had to ask a third time more sternly, reminding him that I don't touch his things, so he should respect mine. That's when he shoved my chair, told me not to ask for his help with computer stuff again, and stormed off to bed, where he watched YouTube reels for hours before falling asleep. He's been sleeping for 6 hours now, and I'm still upset. I don't think I was wrong to ask him to leave my settings alone, and I didn't mean to upset him. I ended up leaving the room, crying in a gas station parking lot because the tension was unbearable. This isn't the first time he's gotten angry like this, and I don't understand why things escalate so quickly. When I pointed out that he's messed with my computer before, he got angry and asked when I'd ever touched his computer. I reminded him of the multiple times he's done it, but somehow he couldn't remember, making me feel like the liar. I'm still trying to process what happened and why he reacted so strongly.
Customer tries to return item bought elsewhere. I work at a small boutique selling home decor and gifts. A woman came in with a decorative vase in its box, wanting to return it. The box was beat up, smelled like it had been in a garage for months, and had a different price sticker format than ours. I asked for her receipt, but she said she didn't have one, claiming she bought it here a few weeks ago. I've worked here over a year and have never seen that vase in our inventory. The barcode didn't match our system. I explained I couldn't process the return without a receipt, and that I wasn't sure we carried the item. She got defensive, saying I must be new or not paying attention. She showed me photos of our store from Google reviews, trying to prove she bought it here. She mentioned seeing similar items on wholesale sites, knowing we sourced from Alibaba suppliers, and thought it shouldn't matter where the box came from. I told her that's not how returns work. My manager explained the same policy, and the woman left in a huff, threatening to leave bad reviews. It's amazing how some people think retail workers will believe anything. The woman's reaction was unbelievable, and it's a shame she didn't understand our return policy. My manager handled the situation professionally, and we didn't give in to her demands. In the end, we stuck to our policy, and the woman left without a refund. We've had similar situations before, but this one was particularly shocking. The woman's attitude and behavior were unacceptable, and we're just glad the situation didn't escalate further. We're still waiting to see if she'll follow through on her threat to leave bad reviews, but we're confident in our handling of the situation.
Demanding table confrontation. I worked as a waitress in a restaurant that relied on word of mouth for its popularity. I had been there for several months and was reliable enough to help train new waiters. One older guy had just been released from training and was working his first night with his own section. I was keeping an eye on him and ready to help when he got overwhelmed. His section had a demanding round table of 6 people in their 20s with attitude. They wanted a dish that wasn't on the menu, but the woman claimed the other location made it all the time and that we had the ingredients. The new waiter was worried and confused, so I told him to ask the back line if they were willing to make it. If not, I would talk to the table. The cooks were fine with making the dish, which was basically a wrap. The situation was resolved from our end, but it was a challenging start for the new waiter. I could have taught him to stand his ground, but it wasn't the right time, given his nerves and it being his first night with his own section. The table's demands were met, and the night continued without any further issues. The new waiter learned a valuable lesson about handling difficult tables, and I was happy to have been able to support him. The restaurant's reputation for excellent customer service was maintained, and we continued to thrive on word of mouth. The new waiter went on to become a confident and skilled server, and I was proud to have played a part in his development. The experience was a great example of how teamwork and communication can resolve even the most challenging situations.
I found it cheaper online. It was a quiet night at the store, the busy rush was over, and we only had a couple of hours before closing. Most of the shoppers were the late night, grab a few bits sort of crowd, nothing too bothersome. That was until a cashier asked me to check the price of a huge multi-pack of Dr. Pepper. The customer was arguing it should be 12, but the till said it was 15, and he claimed to have a photo of the price. I checked the price, but there was no ticket for anything that was 12 on the whole aisle, let alone the same shelf. The price was indeed 15, not 12. I let the cashier know, and she would let the customer know. I was curious about the customer's claim, so I asked the cashier what happened next. She told me the customer showed her his phone with a photo of the product and the price 12 on the screen. But when she asked him where he got the photo from, he said he found it cheaper online. The cashier explained to him that the price online was not the same as the price in our store, and he would have to pay the price on the tag. The customer was not happy, but he ended up paying the 15. After the customer left, the cashier and I were talking about the incident, and we both found it amusing that the customer thought the online price would apply to our store. The customer's reaction was not surprising, but it was still interesting to see how he expected the online price to be honored in our store. The incident was a good reminder that customers often have different expectations, and it's our job to explain the pricing policies to them. In the end, the customer left the store with his purchase, and we closed the store without any further incidents.
Underage sake bombs on 21st birthday. I'd been serving a young couple sake for 6 months, and from the start, their New York IDs looked suspiciously fake. When I first checked, I had to consult my shift lead, who just shrugged and said they were good enough. But on this particular day, the whole family and the kids' friends came in to celebrate his 21st birthday. As I was serving them, 5 young friends ordered sake bombs from another new server. The mom flagged me down and mentioned it was his 21st birthday. When I made eye contact with the kid, I said, "Oh, is it really?" And he just smirks and says yes. I then asked the new server if the group's IDs were all from New York, and she confirmed they were. But here's the thing, I'm certain we've served a group of underage teen sake bombs, and I'm pretty sure the mom is aware of this and doesn't care. The whole situation was unsettling, and I couldn't help but feel like we were enabling underage drinking. The kid and his friends seemed to be enjoying themselves, but I knew I had to report this incident to my manager. I told them about the suspicious IDs and the mom's apparent lack of concern. My manager listened attentively and assured me that they would look into the matter and take necessary actions to prevent such incidents in the future. It was a shocking realization, and I was glad I spoke up, as it's our responsibility as servers to ensure that we're not serving alcohol to minors. The outcome of the incident is still unclear, but I'm hopeful that it will lead to stricter ID checks and a safer environment for everyone.
The retail laugh. I experienced the infamous retail laugh as a customer. Working in retail, you're familiar with the forced laugh and smile when a customer makes a joke about an item not scanning being free. Today, I was on the other end of it. I was buying alcohol at a self-checkout when the age check popped up. The attendant playfully asked if I had ID and I gave a polite haha, complete with a retail smile. I've probably heard that joke more times than I care to think about, but I humored the attendant during our brief interaction. It felt odd being on the receiving end of the retail laugh. The attendant was trying to be friendly, and I appreciated the effort. It's not strictly a retail thing, pretending to laugh at someone else's jokes, but it's a common phenomenon. I was impressed by the attendant's attempt to make our interaction more enjoyable. As I left the store, I couldn't help but think about how often retail workers have to deal with difficult customers, and how a simple joke can make their day a little brighter. The attendant's joke may have been cheesy, but it showed they were trying to connect with me, and that's what made our interaction memorable. I ended up leaving the store with a positive impression, and I'm sure the attendant's effort to make me laugh contributed to that. It's a small thing, but it made a big difference in my shopping experience.
You want special treatment? I worked as a waitress in a restaurant that relied on word of mouth for its popularity. I had been there for several months and was reliable and knowledgeable enough to help train new waiters. One older guy had just been released and was working his first night with his own section. He was awkward, shy, and worried about mistakes, but great to work with. On this night, he was in the section next to mine, and I was ready to help him out when he got overwhelmed. His first demanding table was a group of 6 people in their 20s with attitude. They wanted something that wasn't on the menu, but the woman claimed we had the ingredients and that another location made it all the time. He came to me worried and confused, asking if we could make it. I could have taught him to stand his ground, but it was his first night and he was already nervous, so I told him to ask the back line if they were willing to make it. If not, I would talk to the table. The cooks were fine with making it, basically a wrap, so it wasn't a problem from our end. I was happy to help him out and make sure the table was taken care of. It was a challenging situation, but we were able to resolve it and provide good customer service. The guy was grateful for my help, and I was glad I could support him on his first night. It was a team effort and we were able to make it work. The table ended up leaving happy, and the guy felt more confident after his first night. I was proud of him for handling the situation well, and I was happy to have been a part of it. A chilling encounter on a frigid night. I'm a server in a small Midwestern town, where the temperature had plummeted to a bone-chilling 3 degrees Fahrenheit. On this particularly cold evening, the restaurant was dead, and I found myself getting cut early. I decided to stop by the gas station to grab my usual late-night energy drink. As I was paying, a young man, probably 18 or 19 years old, walked in, shivering uncontrollably. He was dressed in just a hoodie, wet chef pants, and soaked non-slip shoes, with no coat, hat, or gloves to protect him from the harsh weather. His lips had turned blue, and he looked absolutely miserable. He warmed up for a minute and then headed back out into the cold, trudging through the snow. I noticed he bypassed the only other car in the lot, so I rolled down my window and yelled out to him, asking if he was walking. He replied that he was, and I told him it was too cold to be walking and offered him a ride. I explained that I had a son around his age, and if my son were in a similar situation, I would want someone to help him out. The young man told me he was a dishwasher at another store in town, and I knew that dishwashers often get soaked through and are usually the last ones to leave. He lived about 3 miles away from the store and didn't have a car, bike, or even proper winter clothing. With no public transit available in our small town, and the unlikelihood of getting a rideshare at that hour, I knew he had no other choice but to walk. I gave him a ride to his place, made sure he got inside safely, and even gave him the gloves I was wearing, as I had extras at home. I was appalled that his manager had let him leave the store alone, without offering any assistance. In such life-threatening cold, it's crucial to look out for our coworkers. If you see someone struggling to get home on a night like this, please consider lending a helping hand. It's simply too harsh out there, and we should all strive to keep each other safe and warm during the winter months. As I reflect on that night, I'm reminded of the importance of kindness and compassion, especially when the weather can be deadly. I hope my actions inspired the young man to pay it forward, and I encourage everyone to do the same. Let's look out for each other and make it through the winter safely.
Held hostage at home. I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. I was being held hostage at my parents' place, with my 57-year-old dad and 53-year-old mom controlling my every move. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to escape. A couple of friends of mine had a friend who I met last month, and they planned my getaway. My boyfriend and friends were instrumental in helping me, and I'm grateful for their support. I snuck out of the house one night, telling my parents I was going for a walk, and my friend was waiting in his car to drive me to the airport. We had to be careful, as booking a cab would have raised suspicions. My priority was to get out of the country as soon as possible, and I was lucky to have friends who helped me plan the routes and book flights without arousing suspicion. I've had messages and calls from my family, but I've made it clear that my decision to leave was mine alone, and I've listed reasons why I had to go. I've told them I'm willing to work on our relationship if they can't accept my life choices. I'm still contemplating whether my decision was too extreme, but I know I had to take a stand. I'm safe now, and I'm grateful for the support of my friends and the people who reached out to me. I'm trying to move forward and focus on my future, and I'm hopeful that my family will come around eventually. I'm doing okay, and I appreciate everyone's concerns and suggestions. I'm just taking things one step at a time and trying to stay positive.
The colourful IT nightmare. I used to work for a 24-hour restaurant chain in the Pacific Northwest. One fateful night, I received a 2am call from my manager, frantic because the network was down and he couldn't run credit cards. I quickly assessed the situation and told him the issue was likely with the WatchGuard, the device that managed our internet connection. I instructed him to reboot it, explaining it was a simple fix. However, my manager seemed clueless, asking if he should know what the WatchGuard was. I patiently explained it was a red box located on the shelf above his seat in the office. But despite my clear instructions, he just couldn't seem to grasp it. I repeated myself, emphasizing that it was a fully red box with WatchGuard written on it. The conversation was going nowhere, with my manager still unable to find the obvious device. I was getting frustrated, but I tried to remain calm and helpful. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my manager managed to locate the WatchGuard and reboot it, resolving the issue. It was a long and tedious process, but in the end the network was back up and running. My manager learned a valuable lesson about knowing his equipment, and I learned to be more patient when dealing with technically challenged colleagues. The incident may have been frustrating at the time, but it's now a humorous anecdote that I look back on with amusement. The restaurant chain has since upgraded its equipment and provided better training for its staff, so such incidents are less likely to occur in the future.
My girlfriend thinks I forgot our anniversary gift. I'm hiding in the bathroom feeling like I've hit rock bottom. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years and she's the most thoughtful person I've ever met. She remembers everything from our anniversary dates to my favorite foods. I, on the other hand, have a terrible memory. 2 months ago, I bought her the perfect gift, a vintage first edition copy of her favorite book, The Princess Bride. I was so proud of myself for being ahead of the game. But I hid it in a safe place so she wouldn't find it, and now I've forgotten where I put it. Yesterday was our anniversary, and we had a romantic dinner at home. She gave me a beautiful watch with our initials engraved on it, and I was touched. But when it was my turn to give her my gift, I drew a blank. I searched the entire house, but it was nowhere to be found. I checked the closet, under the bed, even the freezer in a moment of desperation. My girlfriend thinks I forgot our anniversary, and I don't blame her. I feel like I've let her down. I've been racking my brain, trying to remember where I put the book. I've never felt so stupid and ashamed in my life. I just want to find that book and make things right. I'm hoping that somehow, someway, I'll remember where I put it and be able to give it to her. Until then, I'm stuck in this bathroom, feeling like the worst boyfriend ever. I just want to make things right and prove to her that I care. I'm still holding on to the hope that I'll find that book and be able to give it to her and that she'll forgive me for my mistake.
Drawing a hard line. My boyfriend and I have been together for nearly 2 years, living together for 1. He owns the house, and I pay the utilities, maintenance, and groceries, which we thought was a fair split. As our anniversary approaches, we've been discussing our future, and we're on the same page about getting married and starting a family. However, to start a family, the house needs significant renovations, estimated to cost around $100,000. We previously agreed that I'd cover the costs as my buy-in, and we could draw up an agreement to protect our financial interests. Lately, I've felt uneasy about investing in his asset without a commitment. I told him I want to be engaged before starting the renovations, so he's making a commitment to me as well. He was taken aback, and we had a heated discussion. He felt I was putting a price on our relationship, and I felt I was being responsible. The conversation ended with us both feeling frustrated and unsure about our future. I'm confident in our relationship, but I don't want to be foolish with my finances. I'm worried that I may have nuked our relationship by drawing a hard line, but I think it's essential to prioritize my financial security. Now our relationship is at a crossroads, and I'm not sure what the future holds. We're still living together, but the tension is palpable. I hope we can find a way to move forward, but for now, I'm left wondering if I made a mistake by standing my ground.
Coffee shop line cutter. I go to a small coffee shop every morning before work, where a line of 5 to 6 people is the norm. However, there's this one guy who thinks he's above waiting. He'd show up, see the line, and then pretend to suddenly remember a question for the barista. He'd walk up to the counter, ask something ridiculous like what size the medium is, and then conveniently order while he's already up there. I've seen him do this at least 4 times, and nobody ever calls him out because confrontation before coffee isn't worth it. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started playing the same game, but with a twist. Whenever I'd see him walk in and start heading toward the counter with his I have a question routine, I'd quickly step out of line and beat him to it. Then I'd ask the most annoying, time-consuming questions possible. What's the difference between a latte and a cappuccino again? Do you have oat milk? What about almond? Soy? Which one froths better? Can you explain your whole pastry selection? And then I'd say, oh, actually, let me get back in line and think about it and go back to my spot. He'd be stuck standing there looking like a jerk. This became our morning routine, with me consistently one-upping him. He'd get frustrated, but I just smiled and enjoyed my coffee, knowing I'd made his morning routine miserable. Now he thinks twice before trying to cut in line, and I get to enjoy my coffee in peace.
Boyfriend called cops on me. I've been working on my book trilogy since I was 16, and it's how I met my boyfriend John, 24, at a writing class 3 years ago. John studied journalism and creative writing, but isn't working in either field. I never planned to make money from my writing, but I do, though it's not my main profession. Recently, I asked John to read certain chapters and give feedback, as my usual beta reader was unavailable.
The story involves the main character getting kidnapped and experimented on, which I warned John would be grotesque and horrifying. He said he'd be fine with it. However, I soon discovered that John had called the local police department because the description sounded too real, and there were non-consensual elements in the chapter. He didn't tell me about the call, and I only found out when an officer showed up at my door the next morning for a welfare check. I was shocked and felt betrayed that John would take such a drastic step without discussing it with me. When I confronted him, he claimed it was a mistake, but I'm struggling to understand why he wouldn't be honest with me about his concerns. Now I'm unsure how to move past this incident and whether our relationship can recover from the trust that's been broken. The fact that he wants me to think it was a mistake makes it even harder for me to process. I'm still trying to come to terms with what happened and figure out the best way to address the issue with John.
I caught a secret shopper in the act. I was going about my day explaining the usual details to a couple in my section when I noticed something off. My owners sometimes send in secret shoppers to test our knowledge and service, and I've learned to recognize the signs. There's one crucial piece of information that we're required to share, and if we don't, it's grounds for termination. I always save it for the end of my introduction, and as I was wrapping up, I saw the couple's demeanor change. They became more serious and focused, their tension building until I dropped the key detail. Instantly their faces relaxed and they leaned back, clearly relieved. As I walked away, the man turned to his date and whispered, "I got it." That's when I knew for sure I had a secret shopper on my hands. I made a mental note to give them extra good service, and as it turned out, they ended up spending the same amount as other shoppers from that company typically do. I'm hoping my efforts will pay off and I'll get a good review. The experience was surreal, and I'm still waiting to see how it will impact my job. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that my attention to detail and good service will earn me a positive evaluation.
Fishy data download. I'm the de facto tech guy at a small educational facility in rural Sweden, where we have a unique project surveilling fish. We track their movement patterns and publish the data, using transmitters inside the fish and antennas around the lake system and streams. My colleague, a 60-year-old man, is tasked with changing batteries in the antennas and downloading the data. This process is time-consuming, involving transporting the boat, driving to the antenna, replacing the battery, and downloading the data, all to be done in reverse afterwards. Ideally, he can do this for multiple antennas in one trip, but this time he returns exhausted, having only managed to do it for one antenna. He tells me the download took almost an hour, which raises my suspicions. We're tracking more fish now, but an hour seems excessive. I ask him how much data we're talking about, and my skepticism grows. He seems hesitant to provide a clear answer, which only fuels my doubts. I start to wonder if something is off with the data, or if my colleague is just not being entirely truthful. As I press him for more information, he becomes increasingly evasive, which makes me even more determined to get to the bottom of this. I decide to investigate further, to see if there's any explanation for the unusually long download time. After some digging, I discover that the issue lies with their equipment, not my colleague's competence. The antennas are old and outdated, causing the slow download speeds. I breathe a sigh of relief, realizing that my colleague was telling the truth, but the equipment was the culprit. We'll need to upgrade the antennas to make the process more efficient, but for now, we'll have to deal with the slow downloads. My colleague's exhaustion is justified, and I apologize for doubting him. We'll work together to find a solution, and I'll make sure to be more understanding in the future.
Confronting AI-generated expectations. We got a bizarre ticket this fall about activating several mysterious features in our service. The feature names were unfamiliar, so we dug through documentation and consulted the development team, but no one knew what the customer was talking about. It wasn't until my colleague mentioned that the feature names sounded like something from artificial intelligence that it clicked the customer had likely asked ChatGPT for help and received a completely fabricated overview of our features. We confronted the customer, asking where he found these features and if they were generated by an AI. He admitted to using AI and complained that we didn't have these features, saying it seemed like a great idea and the AI was onto something. We explained that these features were far outside our service scope and warned him to be more careful when using AI in the future. It was a shocking moment, realizing how much misinformation AI can generate and how it can affect our interactions with customers. The customer seemed to understand our point, but it was clear that this was just the beginning of a larger issue. As AI becomes more prevalent, we'll have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of its mistakes. We can only hope that customers will learn to verify the information they receive from AI systems and not take it at face value. For now, we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve and provide the best possible service to our customers, even when AI generates unrealistic expectations.
Fighting the dress code. 15 years ago, I made a bold move by challenging my school's dress code policy. At the time, our school had a normal policy until a new, younger woman teacher arrived. 3 months into her tenure, she introduced an extremely strict dress code, but only for girls. This was during the start of summer, and our school had no air conditioning, making the new rules even more unbearable. Girls were limited to wearing frumpy t-shirts and baggy jeans, while boys had no restrictions. I was a rebellious teenager, and my girlfriend was unhappy with the new rules. To make matters worse, students who didn't comply were given ugly big brown t-shirts and sweats to wear, which were extremely uncomfortable. I decided to take a stand by wearing every banned article of clothing that girls were not allowed to wear. I wore short shorts, low-cut shirts, and even cut the sides off tank tops to show my torso. I also wore a short skirt and a crop top one day to prove a point. I got away with it for a couple of days before I started getting dress code violations every day. I was in detention for several months, got suspended, and had to attend 2 weeks of summer school as punishment. However, my actions inspired other students to join in,
and soon almost every guy was getting dress code violations to stand up for the girls. We wore the brown clothes with pride, despite the sweltering heat in the building. Years later, I found out why the dress code policy was so strict, and it gave me a new perspective on my actions back then. I realized that my fight against the system, although difficult, was worth it, and I'm proud to have stood up for what I believed in. The experience taught me the importance of challenging unfair rules and fighting for equality. In the end, I learned that sometimes, taking a stand and facing the consequences can lead to personal growth and a greater understanding of the world.
Tricking an internet creep. I'm sharing a story from the early days of the internet, around autumn 1999, when HTML-coded chats were popular. These unmoderated spaces allowed anyone to be a creep without real-life consequences, targeting girls and young women with unwanted contacts. To protect ourselves, we created online communities with member lists, warning lists of known creeps, and early netiquette guidelines. Our community, the Attic, was known as the safest place among these chat rooms. We'd often flood a creep's screen with repetitive text, causing their connection to suffer, and 95% of them would give up. However, some creeps were more slippery and managed to trick victims into sharing personal info. My ex-girlfriend and I came up with a plan to trick one of these creeps. We posed as an attractive girl and started chatting with him, exchanging emails and building his trust. He eventually asked for a picture, and we sent him a fake one. He then asked to meet up, and we agreed, but with a twist. We told him to meet us at a coffee shop, but only if he did a task for us first. The task was to snort a packet of baking soda, which we told him was a special drug that would enhance his experience. He agreed, and we watched from a distance as he snorted the baking soda. Immediately, he started coughing and choking, realizing he'd been tricked. We revealed ourselves, and he was furious, but also embarrassed. The whole ordeal was a huge relief for us, and we felt like we'd finally taken down one of the creeps that had been terrorizing our community. Looking back, it was a crazy and creative way to combat the creeps, and it's a memory that still makes me laugh. The experience taught us to always be vigilant and to look out for each other in online communities. We learned that even in the early days of the internet, there were people who would stop at nothing to harm others, but with quick thinking and teamwork, we could outsmart them. In the end, our community, the Attic, remained a safe haven, and we continued to support each other, sharing our experiences and warnings about potential creeps. The story of how we tricked the creep into snorting baking soda became a legend in our community, a reminder of the power of creativity and teamwork in the face of adversity.
TIFU by complimenting my wife's shirt. I just got into trouble for telling my wife how hot she looked in a shirt. We're going out for my mother-in-law's birthday, and my wife asked if the shirt she's wearing looked okay. I thought it was just a casual question, but I have to admit, she looked amazing in it. The shirt fit her perfectly, and I couldn't help but joke about looking forward to getting it off her later. I made a lame comment about the shirt looking better on our bedroom floor, which made her laugh, but also made her say I'd regret saying that. What I didn't know was that the shirt was given to her by my mom, who had it for years but never wore it. When my wife found out I thought the shirt was so attractive, she started teasing me, asking if I thought it looked that hot when my mom wore it. Our kids even joined in, making jokes about it after being grossed out by my earlier comments. To make matters worse, my wife immediately shared the whole story with my mom and sisters, and now I'm getting ridiculed from all sides. I have no doubt my wife will wear the shirt again at our next family gathering, just to rub it in. I supplied the ammunition, and now I'm facing the consequences. I'm in trouble, and I know I'll be hearing about this for a while. My wife is still laughing about it, and my mom is probably having a good chuckle at my expense. I guess I learned my lesson. Think before you speak, especially when it comes to your wife's clothes and your mom's old shirts.
I outsmarted my bully. I was 18 when I landed my first real job in the Canadian oil patch, working on well testing crews. The pay was $20 an hour with no experience required, a dream come true in the early 2000s. My job involved hooking up pressure tanks and flare stacks to new oil and gas wells, then gathering data for the oil companies. It was hard work, but I was eager to learn. That's when I met Gary, my supervisor, a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s. He was overweight and lazy, only helping me with heavy tasks, while spending most of his time watching DVDs and napping in the trailer. Gary loved to pick on me with insults disguised as jokes, calling me stupid, and making fun of my lack of experience. One day he found out I had never used a power drill, and asked if my dad had taught me anything. I made the mistake of telling him my dad was only in my life for a few years. The next time I made a mistake, Gary said no wonder my dad walked out on me. I called him out on it, but he just told me I couldn't take a joke. I decided I'd had enough of his bullying, so I started using theatrics to spite him. I would overreact to his jokes, pretending to be deeply offended, and it caught him off guard. He didn't know how to react to someone who wasn't intimidated by him. The final straw came when Gary made another comment about my dad, and I pretended to break down in tears, telling him how much his words hurt me. He was taken aback, and for the first time, he apologized for his behavior. From then on, Gary treated me with respect, and we even became somewhat friendly. I learned that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to use their own tactics against them. I'm now in my 30s, and I look back on that experience as a valuable lesson in standing up for myself. I'm grateful for the job and the opportunity to learn and grow, despite the challenges I faced with Gary. In the end, I came out on top, and I'm proud of the way I handled the situation.
Brother's gross habit. I live with my twin brother, dad, and mom. Every morning I'd find urine on the toilet seat. I told my dad how disgusting it was, and he scolded my brother, but the next day it happened again. I grew tired of it, so whenever I saw urine, I'd call my brother to clean up after himself. He'd deny it and refuse to clean, but would do it when I threatened to call our dad.
This seemed like a minor issue, but when my close friend found urine on the seat during a visit, I felt embarrassed and decided to take matters into my own hands. The constant denial and lack of accountability annoyed me. I was fed up with his gross habit and the fact that he wouldn't own up to it. I wanted him to understand how frustrating it was, so I came up with a plan. I waited for the perfect moment to teach him a lesson. One morning, I found urine on the seat again, and I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. I didn't reveal what I had planned, but my brother soon found out. Let's just say he was not happy, and from that day on he made sure to be more careful and clean up after himself. My brother learned his lesson, and our bathroom became a more hygienic place. I'm just glad I could find a way to put an end to his disgusting habit, and we can all live more comfortably. The experience taught me that sometimes you have to take a stand and address issues head-on, even if it's uncomfortable. In the end it was worth it, and our home is better because of it.